how do I deal with the fact that I've got this big limitation that I need to work against, but also that I want to achieve really cool things, but I also want to do really cool things. It takes a lot to ask for help, right? It takes a lot to be like, I need something. It's a bit embarrassing. And so often, like more often than I would like, people are like, either they say it or I can see that they're thinking it, like, why are you asking? I feel really strongly about like taking ownership of the situation that you're in to achieve the things that you want to do and to have the life that you want to have.
No Bullshit Talks is a podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. There's too much bullshit out there, especially when it comes to business. This podcast aims to highlight what's true and what's not in the world of entrepreneurship, bringing you honest and raw conversations about the rollercoaster that is entrepreneurship. Each week, my guest will be a high-performing entrepreneur sharing the ups and downs of their journey and helping you prepare for the road ahead, while providing you with actionable insights and absolute gems of knowledge. Stay tuned as I introduce this week's guest. Caitlin Rozario is the founder of Interlude, where she provides workshops to help ambitious teams make productivity less toxic and more sustainable. She's also the head of brand and culture at the tech scale-up Metrikus. Caitlin aims to make work a lot more sustainable and a lot less toxic through her new anti-toxic productivity bootcamp. I present to you this week's guest, Caitlin Rozario. Welcome to this week's episode of No Bullshit Talks. I've got the incredible Caitlin Rozario in the house. How I say your name?
Yeah, Caitlin Rozario.
That's fine. I feel like it's a very Hollywood name. Caitlin Rozario.
Oh, I love that. I'm getting married next year. People keep being like, you change your name. And I'm like, absolutely not.
When are you getting married? What date? I'm getting married next year. I'm asking. But that question's come up as well about the name. You know, I like my name. I really do. And my partner's name, if I'd say this, my partner's last name is Denman, which is like, I don't know. It's not as Hollywood. No. It's always I love you, like, you know. I don't know. But so I was like, and then people were talking about personal brand and whatever. But I quite like the idea of double barreling it. So I might be Shabana's Denman.
See, that's cool.
It does sound cool.
That could work for sure. Yeah, I just feel very deeply connected to my name. I remember being like a child and being like, I cannot get my head around the fact that I may be a different person one day.
Yeah.
It's just never, and I'm very much everyone's choice, but for me, I've never understood it.
And you just got to do whatever you feel connected with. Doesn't mean I love them any less. Like, you know, so, but I think these days it's more normal, which is really nice. I like the fact that there has been different shifts in things, and you know, and I think that sort of thing is now becoming a bit more normalised, that women don't have to take the man's name.
I know so many people who've done portmanteaus now. People are putting their names together.
Yeah.
And it's like, love that for you.
I've seen that as well. Like I said, there's guys now who've got the wins, and I'm like, wow. Go on. Anyway, this is quite interesting. So I like that. Maybe he should be a Shabana's Denman too.
Why not?
What's it wrong? I don't know. I can't see him as a Shabana's Denman.
Is your dog a Shabana's Denman?
Well, yeah, she was Bella Shabana's, but I think she should be Shabana's Denman.
Yeah, perfect.
He's a great dad. He's a dog dad.
Yeah.
So yeah, she should be Shabana's.
Maybe you should have a little ceremony after you get married and just make her name.
I think that's a really nice idea. I'm so doing that. Any excuse to have like a party. I love it. I love how we just had this random interlude now. We'll get into the podcast. Caitlin was, Can you tell us a little bit about yourself first? Because I feel like introductions, should always be done by, you know, the person, because you can do it better. I won't justify what you actually do. So
yeah, I love that. So yeah, I'm Caitlin Rozario. Nailed it first time. I do quite a few things. So I am the head of brand and culture for a tech startup called Metrikus, just across the river. I'm also the founder of Interlude, which is now in its second iteration. So it was a tech startup to begin with, and then we've moved into this more like in real life workshops phase, which is much less stressful and way more fun, which is great. And I'm also really soon launching a writing kind of project. I don't want to call it a newsletter because it's not news, but it's like essays. It's called How Not to Start a Startup. And it's off the back of that pivot where I had kind of a few dark months when we kind of closed down the startup version of Interlude. And we were kind of, in the desert a little bit. And I just was like, what would I do if I were to do this again a second time? And I was like, hey, I don't know loads of founders. I know loads of smart people. What would they do if they were to do it again a second time? So that's kind of the premise of it. So I'm working on that at the moment as well, which is really fun. And then the final thing that's important about me is I suffer from hay fever, which is why I start this today.
Me too. And if I start crying in the middle of it might be because we're getting emotional, but it's also because I have hay fever too.
It could be emotions, it could be pollen. Either way.
So yeah, that'll be us. We'll be in balls of tears by the end of the episode, I'm sure. But tell me about Interlude, because I feel like for those who don't know about it and what you do, I'd love to hear about why you started Interlude and what it does.
Yeah, well, to dive in the deep end right off the bat, my partner, Will, he was in lockdown, he was teaching himself how to code. He was on 80% time, so he was like, what am I going to do with that 20%? So he started teaching himself how to code, and he was like, I really want to build a project to do something with it instead of just learn it, And we were looking at what was going on, and this was really like early doors lockdown. This is like March, April 2020. And we could see that work was becoming a really, really big problem. And I remember really early in the lockdown sitting on the sofa and seeing a news report that was like productivity is soaring. And I remember being like, that's such a bad thing. Like, it's only soaring because we have nothing else to do. And that is going to crash, which obviously did. And so when we were looking at this, Will was like, I want to build something to help people work better. And we were talking about this loads, and what we came to was micro breaks, because there's loads of research that suggests that micro breaks are one way to feel really good and to do better work. So why I said to get deep really quickly is because this also aligned with my lived experience, which was that in 2012, I was right at the beginning of my first term at uni, and I went on a big night out with my friends to Tiger recorded. Oh my God, I've been there. R.I.P. Best club ever. Groovy Wonderland, you are missed. Took them there, had an amazing time. The next day, I didn't realise it was a hangover. I thought I had the flu. I was 18, so I didn't get hangovers at the time. Now, looking back, I know it was a hangover, which was a terrible mistake. I thought I had the flu, took some medicine, didn't know I was allergic to the medicine. Went blind, within 5 days. I could only see, the way I describe it is it was like looking through cling film. I could see colours and shapes at different things. I couldn't see my fine vision was completely gone. And it turned out that I'd hemorrhaged in the back of both of my eyes. I burst a load of blood vessels, which was really not good. Not good.
Medicine?
Yeah.
Or the flu?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. It was mad. And when I look back on it, it was only when I started doing therapy for burnout a couple of years ago. And my therapist was like, wow, that was such an intense trauma to go through at 18. And I was like, no. Trauma's other things. And she was like, no, you have not. You've not processed this yet. So we did a lot of that there. But at the time, I was 18 and I was like, I'm going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to go back to uni. I went skiing 2 months later. At this point, I wasn't blind anymore. I had the vision impairment I have now. But I had a panic attack skiing, obviously.
It was what the hell? Oh my God.
I was literally, when you're 18, you think you're invincible. So after the month where I was really couldn't see anything and it started coming back, I was like, I've already paid for it. I'm just going to go. It's going to be fine. I am not a good skier. I'm not a confident skier. I was like, let's just go. And yeah, it was not good. So all of that is to say, where Interlude came from was that marriage of my lived experience and understanding that when I decided to go back to uni, I was able to go back to uni the next term, and I was like, I have a choice. I can either drop out and come back in a bit, or I can try and get this degree. And I decided to try and get the degree, and I realised with a bit of trial and error that if I worked myself down to the bone, I would my vision would literally like this, kind of shut down, and I'd be trying to do. I was doing English as well, so really very convenient.
Yeah,
and I realised that if I have a nap or I go for a walk or whatever, I can come back more refreshed, and it doesn't take as long. So I realised that taking these micro breaks was the best way to do it. And I graduated, and that was great. And then I did a master's because I felt like I didn't really get to have the full experience of my education. So I did a master's and I used that and I did so well. I really, I had the best time, did really well in it. So I was like, by the time it came to Will talking about this, to come back to long story short as well, long story medium, I was like, okay, the science is saying this, and I also have done this myself, so I feel really passionately about it. I feel really strongly about taking ownership of the situation that you're in to achieve the things that you want to do and to have the life that you want to have. Because at the same time, I also wanted to go out. I wanted to have a social life. I was like, okay, I'm at a disadvantage. I was at Cambridge, so it was really intense. And I was like, but I still want to go out with my friends. So how do I make all these things work? So that was what the tech version of Interlude was to begin with.
Wow. I have so many questions because I'm just I'm going back to my 18-year-old uni days, and if that had happened to me, I don't think I would have been able to cope with that. I just don't think certainly wouldn't be skiing. I would, but I wouldn't. How did you? I want to talk about that for a second, because that takes a mega mindset. When you go through dark times and you're thinking it's the worst, especially when you're 18, 19, every breakup is the worst that you've heard as well, right? It's such a big deal. You don't understand the grand scheme of things. So run me through what was going through your mind when you were 18, this happened to you. Did you not think, oh my God, this is the worst thing in the world? I'm never going to get a boyfriend because no one wants to date someone like this. This is what will go through my head. I panicked when I got braces because I got late at 17, and I ended up dating the complete loser because I was like, I'm not going to get another boyfriend if I got braces.
To be completely honest, I don't remember. I only remembered this once my mum said it, so maybe it was a recovered memory. Maybe I've built it. I don't know. But only a couple of years ago, I was talking to my mum while I was doing the therapy, and I was saying, my therapist thinks I maybe haven't processed this. And she was like, well, do you remember what you said? And I was like, no, not really. The whole kind of that first month. So this happened at the beginning of the Christmas holidays. My family are from Dublin, so I always spend Christmas in Dublin. And I just remember sitting on the sofa a lot because I didn't really know about podcasts at that point, which would have been great because I would have just filled my time with that. My thing at Christmas is my grandparents would always buy me a big stack of books. I would literally just sit and read all holidays. Couldn't read anything. So I remember just sitting on the sofa, listening to Christmas films I remember not being able to see my Christmas dinner and being like, what do I do? But beyond that, I don't really remember a huge amount. And so my mum said, do you remember what you said? And I said, no, not really. And she said that I was sat in the kitchen and and I'm a super emotional person. Like I said, I may cry during this and I cry a lot. And my family were like, you crying? Are you okay? And I don't remember saying this, but my mum said, I was like, well, if I start crying, I'm never going to stop. So I'm just not going to get upset about it. So I don't know if it was just a purely delusional, or I'm just going to block this out mindset and just act like this isn't here. But it's mad. So quickly you develop coping mechanisms, and then the anxiety shifts. So one thing that I am really good at is I can't see people's faces very well. If I move about half a metre further, I won't be able to see your face. Yeah. But after a few times of meeting, I can tell you a mile off from how you walk. Yeah. Yeah. And clothes. So yeah, I genuinely don't remember anything about anything. I just was very much one day at a time, keep plodding on.
That's an insane defense mechanism for having to process that. Because that's what I'm saying. I don't think I would have been able to at that age. You think you're so brave at that age. Yeah. At least you're not. You're just this fragile little teenager. And that was your body and mind telling you this is how you're gonna handle this. And it just shows you how insanely powerful the brain is because it was able to do that. But then tell me the good thing about it. You got your sight back. What happened? You went from being blind and now you can see you've got an impairment, but how did you get that sight back?
This is bonkers. So what I have is called acute macular neuroretinopathy. When I was diagnosed, there were 60 other people in the world who have had this. Most of those only have it in one eye and I've got it in both. They were like, oh, you're really rare. I was like, so that's great. Also, normally it's at the front of the eye. I have it at the back. So it's just really like layers on layers. But of those 60 people, half of them stayed the same from the initial, like when it happened. 25% got better and 25% got worse. And of the 25% who got better, no one as of then had regressed. So I'm in the 25% that had, it went down and then it went back up to exactly where it is now. Like it hasn't, when it kind of stopped and it plateaued, and it's been exactly the same for 12 years now. So fingers crossed. And like the thing that's amazing is that what this presents as is macular degeneration, which so many of us get when we get older. And because we have an aging population, there's quite, even though this is so rare, there's a lot of my friends are doctors, a lot of their parents are doctors, and there's a lot of hope that the kind of, like the laser surgery won't work for me because that's the wrong part of the eye, but there's a lot of hope that this will be something that there is surgery for in the near future, because so many of us are going to be dealing with something so similar. So yeah, it just got incrementally better and better until, so now I have like a blurry patch that's about this big in the middle, and then depending on the day, I could have like the rest of it could be a bit like it's stress, strain, tiredness, if I'm ill, all those sorts of things. And then I get like migraines and aura and stuff like that. But like it's very manageable compared to what it was. So I'm very lucky.
I have got some questions on that disability fund.
Yeah.
Are you happy to call it a disability for start? Because I feel like this is another controversial topic. Like, would you consider this to be a disability?
Yeah, so technically it is. Okay, a disability, well, I can only speak to my sphere, but it's a disability if it's not corrected with aids. So glasses help me, I had a rubbish eyesight anyway. It's not terrible, but like that paired with the impairment is quite annoying. I'm just being vain and not wearing them right now. But with the glasses on, I still have but it doesn't change the blur spot. That's still there. So I only in the last couple of years have been able to call it a disability. I've only been able to feel comfortable with that because mine was more that I didn't feel disabled enough.
Yeah.
But it's like, it has had such an impact on my life. And actually you asked about that mindset thing. And I remember being, I think, out of the blind stage, but being like, thank God I didn't want to be a surgeon or even like a newsreader or something that relied on sharp focus, which I just don't have anymore. And I think that really helped as well. Like the gratitude that, okay, yeah, I'm trying to read bloody Shakespeare plays, but like, that's fine. I get a lot of support from uni. It's fine. But I think that really helped. So whilst I have become comfortable with saying I have a disability and this is a disability, I'm not yet comfortable in the person first language. I'm not there yet. I haven't. Well, I really respect people's decision whether they choose disability first or person first. I'm not yet comfortable with it. And I think I am still a little bit limited by that. Am I disabled enough thing?
That's so intriguing because it just speaks to so many conversations that I see online, right? And the conversations around disability or around a lot of this stuff now that's talked about. And what do you need to do to be considered disabled? Do you have to be in a wheelchair? Because when people say disabled, they think wheelchair or something like that. And there are so many disabilities out there. There are lots of invisible disabilities as well. And, you know, we've talked about how people are, we don't look disabled.
Yeah.
And there's all that sort of thing. And there's also just ableism, whether intentional or not. There's a lot of that sort of stuff. And it is really difficult to navigate this world. How have you felt as someone with a disability, because that's how you're comfortable talking about it, someone with a disability for most of your life now, almost half of the hour. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, right? So, you know, how have you dealt with that in terms of like how has work been, like how have people accommodated to it? What have people's reactions been? Because so over the last few years, there's been a lot of talk around, you know, accessibility, inclusivity, and it's great that people are finally sort of waking up to it. But people still don't do it well. They still don't want to do it. But let's take even prior to all that, like, what was that like for you? What have you seen that's done well? What have you seen that's done awful? And how do you think it is now? Like,
I mean, there's obviously a difference in experience for every person with a disability, every disabled person. And then there's obviously a difference in experience between people with visible and invisible disabilities, both on every side of the spectrum, right? Like my friend, I'm friends with Millie Pickles, who you may know, she's amazing. And she's a para athlete, and she was putting on Instagram a while ago her difficulty with getting a blue badge. And her leg was amputated, and like their reasoning was, oh, but with your leg on you can get around.
Oh my god,
is that true? Like,
my god.
But the levels are wild. It's wild. And then on the invisible disability side, like this is obviously like really minor, but like sometimes it has an impact. But like you're saying, like when people just question you and you're like, it takes a lot to ask for help, right? It takes a lot to be like, I need something. It's a bit embarrassing. And so often, like more often than I would like, people are like, either they say it or I can see that they're thinking it. Like, why are you asking? Like,
you look fine.
Yeah, you look fine. Yeah. You're all right. And so that's super annoying. With work, I didn't actually even become comfortable talking about this until, I don't even know. It was a long time. Like, I had friends who were so supportive, like people at uni, but like, she seems so unfriendly, like she's always scowling. And my friends would be like, she has this thing, she doesn't want to talk about it. It's just so sweet of them. And then I think it wasn't really until my second proper job out of uni that I like spoke to my manager, and I was doing a lot of stuff with spreadsheets, and lines fuck me up. Like, and stripes, I'm like, whoa, like they make everything, they make the whole room. My mum has this stripy dress and what she's wearing, I'm like, I can't look at you. And so I was saying, like, spreadsheets I find really difficult. Like, it just means that I'm going to need a bit more time, and I also will need you to double check. I will double check, triple check, but I also need you not to just check. I need you to double check, which was fine. But people forget, and then I would get in trouble for something not being right. And I was like, I have made it really clear that I do need extra support with this. And then people feel uncomfortable, and then sometimes people, when they're uncomfortable, will like be like awkward, and then so it's not major, but I've had that happen a lot with managers, and it's not like fun, to be like, oh yeah, the reason is because of this. So it depends.
How does that make you feel though? Because I feel like you say it's not major, but if that's happening frequently and you're always made to feel like you're to blame and this disability is making you not a good employee, or it's like you're putting other people out there, isn't that a big play on like, your emotions and how you feel?
Yeah, especially because I was younger as well, and I'm a real people pleaser, so I'm much better now, but I used to be so terrible for it, so I'd obviously feel really awful. But I think also I've always wanted to challenge myself, and in my first 2 proper jobs out of uni, I was doing things that were out of my comfort zone, and it was that kind of helped me to realise, actually, I need a job that plays to my strengths, which I think a lot of people feel, but I particularly was like, I can't actually be dealing with all these spreadsheets and all these numbers. It just isn't working for me. I need to move into a role that is more within my wheelhouse. So that's why I moved into content marketing, because I was like, words I can do. You can spell check it. It's easy for people to look at it. That's fine. Numbers are obviously much harder to spot errors. So I was like, I wanted to move out of that. And that was the first step into being like, okay, right, now things are starting to align.
Yeah, and that makes so much sense. So what would you say for any employers out there, any companies out there who does have someone with a disability? What advice would you give them to make them feel comfortable, help accommodate them, and just get them to be the best version of themselves and feel safe and comfortable to open up? What would you say?
I think it starts before someone even joins. I think it's on the job description. Like, we support all of our employees, whatever they're working with, whatever they're dealing with. Like, please do feel free to let us know what accommodations you need. And then I feel really personally, I don't think everyone has to do this. I think if you've got something, if you're working with something and you don't want to talk about it, that's 100% your decision. For me, I feel like because I do feel comfortable talking about it now, I have a duty to use that to a wider benefit. So in interviews, I will always say, I have vision impairment. Sometimes I need more time on things. Sometimes I just wake up and it's like that cling film thing. And I'm just like, today is a podcast day. Today's a listening to things day. It's not a looking or typing day. It just isn't. It's just not there for me. And I say that to the interviews and I'm like, is there anything that you need? You can either tell me now or you can drop it in an email if you don't feel comfortable talking about it. And I think that helps people to be like, oh, this is a company where I actually can say those things. Because when I started, I debated heavily whether I was going to be discriminated or not by talking about it. And to this day, you don't know, right? You don't know. Yeah. It's down to the company, but it's also down to the manager. Yeah. You don't know. So I just make it clear if I'm the hiring manager that like it's safe with me. And if you want to talk about it openly, that's fine. But if you only want it to be between you and me, that's fine too. So I think it starts before someone's even there.
I think that's a really difficult discussion as well, because I know that I've had this discussion a lot with people of colour, for example, and there's, the, systemic racism that goes through certain industries or just in general, like people and have that racial bias, the same as disabilities. And like, if you suddenly just declare that you've got a disability in an interview, are they immediately like, yeah, we're not hiring that person? And how do you know that you didn't get that job because, someone was better for the role or just because they just don't want to hire someone with a disability? And it's really hard never knowing that. And then if you go away thinking then that's what it is all the time, you have a hang up on this disability. And I've seen how people respond to that. And then some people then end up blaming their disability for a lot of things and it gets in the way of making their progress. So I don't know if you've seen much of that and experience.
It's a really vicious cycle. And the answer is that you will never know, really. Like, no hiring manager, this hay fever is really getting me today. No hiring manager is going to go, because it's illegal, no hiring manager is going to say, oh yeah, we've passed on you because it's just going to be too hard for us to work with what you've got. Like, they can't do that. So you're never going to know. Yeah. Which means you are always going to question it. Yeah. And I guess the thing that I've done when I haven't gotten roles is like, if it was down to that, I didn't want to work with you anyway. So whatever.
Yeah. And that takes a lot of confidence and it takes a lot of personal work on that, which I think is incredible. But it's amazing that you've come this far and like now you're running your own thing, which I want to talk about as well, because I feel like, interlude is something that, and I like the name, how like it's an interlude from your day and it's little micro breaks. So I want to understand, like, I guess why productivity is so important to you and what made you kind of want to build this app.
Yeah, this is a really interesting question because obviously productivity can sometimes get a bit of a bad rap. Yeah, and people can think it's toxic and all those sorts of things. But my view is that if you are working, you are engaged with productivity, right? Like, if you've got a job and you are working, it's there. It's this weird amorphous thing, right? Like, what is it really? And for me, it's a tool, right? Productivity is a means to an end. It's not the end goal. It's a means to an end. And for me, I want to live a life. I'm always said that I want to live an extraordinary life. Like, whatever that looks like for you, it doesn't really matter. But for me, I never wanted to have like a run-of-the-mill life. I've always wanted to do really interesting things. And I also have this big thing that I'm working with. And so for me, I started getting interested in productivity and all these different things that you can do because I'm like, right, how do I deal with the fact that I've got this big limitation that I need to work against, but also that I want to achieve really cool things, but I also want to do really cool things. And like that, you need time and you need energy. So how do I like utilize that? And that's kind of what productivity is, of that, like that thing that helps us to do the things we want to do. And like, for me, it's about like doing it and achieving the things you want without the personal price tag, because I've been there as well. I've had burnout. Just because I've thought about this a lot doesn't mean that I haven't like succumbed to it. But it's also about sometimes the things I want to do are nothing. Sometimes the things I want to do is rest, is a lazy day. On Saturday, I was so hungover and I stayed in bed and snoozed, read all day. And I was like, this is wonderful. I'd worked the week out so that I knew that I would have all day Saturday to do that. Because when you run a business and have another job, there's loads to do. But I was like, no, Saturday I want to do absolutely nothing. And that was because of productivity stuff that I'd planned my time well enough that I knew I could do that with absolutely zero guilt, no shame. And it was luxurious. It was so nice. I was like lying there like, I feel terrible, but this is wonderful. So that's what it's about for me. It's not about ticking things off a list. It's about having that life that you want to live and taking control of it so that you can have it.
Yeah, and I love that so much because that's my dream as well. Like people go to me, what does success look like? And I don't have a monetary number on that. I have a freedom, like a level of freedom. I think that freedom should be to do whatever you want when you want. You're not obliged to do anything in particular. And I think that is ironically why most of us start our own business. But when you start a business, you realise freedom is not what you usually have. You're usually absolutely having to work every single hour because time is money. And if you don't, you feel guilty. And that's what leads to burnout, right? And this is what people don't realise because they glamorise entrepreneurship, and you aren't just free. You aren't just lying on a beach and doing whatever you want. You actually, and you just said, oh, I was just lying in bed, hungover on a Saturday, reading and sleeping. I was thinking, that's probably what most people do on a Saturday. Yeah, I had weekends of still. You're going to have to block that in and actually make sure that was a thing. But that is really what entrepreneurship's like, because people are like, oh my God, you're working on weekends, that's bad. I was like, why is it bad? Like, it's your lifestyle. Like, I actually love working on a Sunday. It's like probably my most favourite thing, because on Monday you don't feel stressed. Like, you have so much more done. It's so quiet. People aren't emailing you. I love a Sunday
for deep work.
Yeah,
love it.
I love it. And like, what else are you gonna do? I mean, like, the weather's nice now, so I might be out there. Do you know what? I'll take a book out into the park and I'll write some notes and I'll work and do that. Like, you don't have to be at your desk at all. Like,
yes.
And so I love that attitude towards productivity, and it's so much more refreshing than the crap that's on social media and online at the moment. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because I just feel like everyone's a productivity guru and everyone's got these things, and they're sharing all these cheat sheets every day about, like, you know, the 2-minute rule, or like, you know, all these the same stuff over and over again. And I'm thinking, how many of you actually use this stuff as well? How much of it actually works? Is it applicable to every single person? No, probably not. And something that, for example, like the Pomodoro technique, I like it. I love what it's about. I've used it. But it doesn't work for everything, because like you said, deep work. It's not going to work for deep work if you're taking a break every 25 minutes necessarily. It's not going to work necessarily for people with ADHD. And like, some people with ADHD might actually love it because it makes them concentrate. So everyone's very different. So I'd love to hear from you about like what your thoughts are on classic media perceptions of productivity, and your thoughts on what it should look like.
You have hit on the exact reason why Interlude is what it is now. So now we deliver corporate workshops, and the whole point of it, we call it anti-toxic productivity. And the whole point of that, the reason why it's called that, is because what's toxic to you might be exactly sweet for me. And so, no, none of those things work for everyone, and it's not the point. So we do 3 kind of core sessions, and the middle one is all the kind of practical stuff. And the point of it, literally what I say in it is like, all of these will not work for you. Like, my partner designs my own deck. Like, he's very proud of it. This slide that's like a disclaimer at the beginning of a film is like that. It's like, these won't work for everyone. Like, yeah. Before we go in, don't get all het up. Like, I tried time blocking, it doesn't work for me. Cool. What we want people to do is, the whole point of what we're doing now is teaching people about a toolbox of different things that you could have. And it's about really interrogating your work to see, what do I need right now for this kind of work? But having that knowledge and awareness of other things that you might need to use so that you can deploy them when you need it. So you mentioned Pomodoro. You can't do deep work if you've got an alarm going off every 25 minutes. But that is exactly what you've just said is kind of what we're talking about, which is you've got Pomodoro in your pocket. And you're like, okay, so for me, Pomodoro works really well when I have to get through big chunks of reading, because I get tired reading stuff. So like, it works really well to set a timer and be like, I'm going to read this, like a lot of scientific studies. Sorry, scientists are really yes. So I'm like, I'll read it for 25 minutes to take a break. But what's great about it is different people respond in different ways, and I'm super competitive. So I then start to try and beat myself. So then I'm like in competition against the clock, and I'm like, so then it becomes another thing. And that's the whole point, is how can you take these kind of basic ideas or these systems, these processes, these strategies, and make them your own. And that's my problem with a lot of the productivity media. I cannot stand when people are like, do this and it'll change your life. It's like, do this and it might change your life. There'll be some people it will change your life. For someone else, you're like, this isn't resonating with me. But maybe in 10 years, they'll be like, oh, you remember that thing? I'm going to try it now. So I struggled with this because I felt like I was being too nuanced for social media, being like, I felt like I was context collapsing all the time, being like, oh, you could do this, you could do that. Actually, after a while, I've decided, no, I'm going to stick to my guns on this, because I really don't like people stating their opinion as fact, especially when the fact is contrary to the opinion. If you have 100 productivity tools, tips, systems, whatever, they will not work. Not like is not one person that all of 100 of those will work for. But on the flip side, I really want to challenge people to be like, okay, you tried time blocking once and it didn't work for you. Actually, science says that it is really good, and humans, it really works for you. So maybe try using it in a different way and see if that works for you. Because if you're complaining that that you're not productive enough, whatever that means to you, or you're not getting through things, you want more free time, you want more time affluence, you want more creativity, maybe try it in a different way. So from all angles, I'm trying to challenge people to think about these things a little bit differently, because it is really frustrating when you're told this works for you, but it's also really frustrating when people say to me, that just doesn't work for me. I'm like, well, trying it for a day doesn't really count, you know?
I feel like with social media at the moment, there is definitely that, though. There is like, this is gospel, and like, you know, this is the only way. And what's ironic, I think the same people are using contradictory information, and one week they'll be saying one thing, and another week they'll be saying another, but then all their little followers will just be like, yeah, sounds great. And I think if it sounds easy and nice, then people will just kind of lap it up. And I think that's dangerous. And I think it's setting a false sense of, you know, expectations for entrepreneurs or people who want to be more productive. I don't know if you've seen that on your workshops and what people are thinking.
Yeah, this is a long game. This is a long game. This is about this is why in our workshops, the first one is reflective. There's no tips and tricks in that at all. It's all being like, where are you at? What are you trying to achieve at the moment? Like, what do you want more of in your life? What's the context of your team that you're working in? Because there are no quick fixes. Like the tips and tricks, like I said, they're for like in the moment when you're like, oh, I need something right now. But like, there needs to be an underlying discipline of like, this is where I want to get to, and this is how I'm going to try and work on that. And also, I think the big thing is a flexibility to be like, when my circumstances change, I need to review this because it might not work for me. And I think that I understand where people are coming from with the whole like didactic way of doing things, because social media is not aligned to our best interest in terms of deep thinking, reflection, experimentation. All of this algorithmic way of thinking is aligned to how can I get this out to the most people. And that's why I kind of stopped getting stressed about the fact that I haven't had any virality, really. It's because it's like, well, what I do is quite nuanced. And so it can't really be viral because it's not snappy. It's just not. So I can see why people fall into the trap of like saying 10 different things, because they're just trying to do, I think there are some people who are snake oil salespeople, but like, I think a lot of us are just trying to do our best and put our point across. But we're also working with this technology that it's not aligned with the best way of delivering that message, which is a real shame. And then on the flip side, when we're trying to receive information, we all want the quick fix. So we then feed the algorithm by giving all those things the likes, love this, that's great, because we all want that. We want that quick win. And like, I am so guilty of seeing a course, £120, and this is going to change your life. And I'm like, change my life? Yeah, a week's change my life, yes. But like, there's a reason why it's a cliche that like anything worth having doesn't come easy, because it is about just plodding on and like figuring stuff out and like being reflective and thinking about like where am I at now versus where I want to be, how have things changed. So, and I think the other thing is that we've become way less critical, and I mean that in, we're obviously very critical in this sense, but we've become less like nuanced and less willing to critique things. We want to accept the big shiny thing that's given to us because it's easy, when really you can take a little bit of what someone's saying and say, okay, how can I take a nugget of that and weave it into what I've been consciously working on and intentionally working on. Oh, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. I feel for all of us.
Yeah, me too, because I feel like I feel so overwhelmed just going on social media and absorbing all this information. And I think that, like I said, the virality thing, people are addicted to it. So it's like they're trying so hard. And I think that the things that sound really nice and sound really easy and give us that false hope that we can achieve this perfect life, that's the stuff that goes viral because it's easy. No one wants to hear the real hard, cold truths. And like, I think obviously the whole no bullshit thing is what I do is try to give those real hard, cold truths. But, I think then the ones that get engagement on that are usually because people are disagreeing with it and they don't like it. And they're like, no, this is, at the end of the day, I called something out, which I think, you said you also see it, like I was talking about it. And people are there going, this is a very depressing post. And I'm like, I'm really sorry that you find it depressing, but it's also, this is what the situation is. Like, yeah. And like, that's just, you can't just live in sunshine and rainbows all the time. And I mean, it's nice to pretend that that's what it is, but it's not like that. I think that's what's really hard. So, I get that all this productivity stuff makes it sound so easy. Like, it's just like, oh, you do this and you'd be able to be so productive and you'd be able to 10x your workload. And I feel like that's why I think your workshops are so needed, because everyone's really different and there's so much out there which is so intimidating that at least you can help hone in on that. And well, you say.
Well, no, it's so interesting because I think there's a difference between easy and ease, right? Like what we've always wanted to do is we're in agreement that productivity looks different for everyone, right? And what people think of it and all those different things. So there's a classic, like way back when productivity, well, some people it still is, but that factory, input in, output out, But knowledge work is very different to that. And you've got these kind of like these what's the word I'm looking for? These kind of like the canon of ideas around productivity, A good example is like Chris Bailey talks about it being managing your time, energy, and attention. Great. I see a lot of that. There's all these different things. So what we kind of think it comes down to is with this anti-toxic productivity idea, it's like, what can you do to make your work more sustainable, more intentional, and more enjoyable? That's not to say that work is always going to be enjoyable, but you are going to do better at it if you build that in, if you intentionally build something in that some parts that you enjoy. And that's why I'm talking about ease and easy, because we do want to help people find some ease in some things. Like if there are parts of your work that are difficult, but there are actually some tweaks that we can make to bring a level of ease into that, then that's great. And like there is a level of like some things are easy fixes, you just don't know about them. But I think we're being told that everything is easy. Just do this and just do that. And on the other hand, there's people go the other way and they build all these complex systems, and then you're spending so much time getting the dopamine hits from the system and building this thing and filling everything in that you're not actually doing the work.
Yeah.
So I just want people to find that middle that works for them specifically.
I feel like you are a great person to ask about productivity anyway, because like you said, you're head of brand and culture at Metrikus, so I feel like you already got a full-time job, which is already taxing.
Part-time.
Oh, is it part-time? Yeah. Okay, fine. But you've got a part-time job and you're running a startup. Now, can we talk please about that? Because I feel like that is intense a lot already. I think there's a lot of people who probably are in jobs at the moment going, oh, I'd love to do a startup. How do I manage it? I guess, how did you kind of do that? And how are you managing your time? And what advice would you give for people who want to do that?
It's been a journey. So when I started, it was full-time. I was working full-time and I was doing Interlude on the side. And then because I am, I don't know, a masochist, I thought the only way to learn how to run a business is to do an MBA.
Would you have actually done the same one? Yes.
So I was like, I'm going to do that as well. Which obviously I burned out, like really not very well, but Quantic were really good. They helped me take some time and it was fine. It was all fine, but it got there in the end. But actually the point there is that like my company have always been really supportive. So I was really open with them from the start. I'm also in a really fortunate position that my manager is one of my best friends. We met at a previous job and we've just kind of, she hired me and like, so we've had a lot of trust between us, and I made it very, very clear that when I'm at Metrikus, I'm giving them 100%. When I'm with Interlude, I'm giving that 100%. But we've also always been really flexible. So when something does come up, like we have a kind of a shorthand that Charlotte, if she calls me, my manager, our CMO, if she calls me, I know that it really needs dealing with. Like she wouldn't call me unless it did. And so they were always really supportive. And I think just because I made it very, very clear that I kind of set those boundaries, that I was always going to give it my all. Like, I think that's why it's worked out quite well for me, is because I've like established that level of trust and flexibility both ways. So I think those are the key things. But I've had a huge amount of support. So there's not only Charlotte, but like the other people in the company, my team, everyone has been so amazing, so helpful, so supportive. And then we also have some really good benefits. Like I have healthcare when I had some health issues. That was really helpful. When I didn't burn out, we have therapy. So I was able to get therapy. So it's been kind of a perfect storm in that sense. I've been able to, I don't know if I'd be able to do it other places. So I think I would advise people, if they want to do something on the side, don't quit your job. Don't quit your day job. If you want to do something on the side, monetize it first and make sure it's viable, unless you've got loads of money, in which case live your life. But I would say otherwise run it on the side. But how I managed my time was those boundaries. I think that was really, really important. And then also really like a big thing for me is time blocking, really making sure that everything's parceled out so I know what needs to be done when, and making sure everything's prioritized so that I don't trip over things. So that is really, really core. That really helps me to do it. And I actually have, I would say, a fairly convoluted planning system. I show it in my workshops, not to be like, you should do it this way, but because I don't want people to be like, are you just selling this because it can make you some money? I want to be like, no, this is a hard one. Like these lessons are hard one. And I show people my planning system, which is kind of 4 stages, because I want people to see that like, you can build something for yourself that works for you. I showed it in a workshop once. Someone was like, is that a bit toxic? And I was like, yes, it might be for you. It really might be for you. But this is what I'm built over time to accommodate my multiple roles. And I've also got 2 roles within that day job as well. I'm brand and culture. So I still have 2 teams. So, and then also I really take my social life. I take that really seriously. And like my partner, my family, my friends, that's really my hobbies. That's really important to me. So that really kind of, that planning system that looks convoluted and toxic to other people is how I make sure that things work for me. So I just use that as an example of it, showing people like, don't let other people tell you what to do, because one person's toxic is another person's treasure.
I love that. I love it so much. It's all personal. And I love that you said don't quit your day job, because oh my God, I just feel like there's so many people out there who are totally regretting quitting their day job because of all the social media posts that were just like, just do it. Like, you know, you got to start, like, and don't think about it, just quit and to do it. Or I quit my job and 4 months later I was a millionaire. Like, there's all these empowerment stories, and I feel like it's so misleading that so many people out there rage quitting their jobs and then hitting rock bottom because they can't pay the bills. And it's just so impractical. So I'm so glad you didn't say that. It's like, it's terrifying out there. Again, all the advice that just misleads people.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know. A friend of mine, Matthew Cook, he is very, very smart. When I told him about this, he was like, oh, part-time plus. And I was like, I love that.
Yeah, I love that.
Because actually, because people, you know, I've spoken to coaches, I have an amazing coach, but previous coaches that I spoke to, like, so what's it going to take you to quit your job? And I was like, I don't want to quit my job. I actually don't want to. Right now, I love my team at Metrikus. I love the work I'm doing is super interesting. I'm learning so much, and that means a huge amount to me. And then Interlude is my own thing. I have freedom, I have creativity. I get to do the thing that I love the most, which is speaking in front of people, helping people learn, ingesting resources and helping people to take what they need. And at the moment, that is ideal for me. And so the other thing I would say to people is maybe doing two things would actually be really good for you, because, you know, you're kind of the master of your own destiny when it comes to income with your own job, your own business or whatever. And then you've got the support and the salary and the benefits of a day job. If you can give 100% to each of those at the time they're allotted, then you can build to a winner. Yeah. So it's not, for some people it is all or nothing. And, you know, I still would say, like, make sure that you've got enough money for an emergency fund, make sure that your dependents, whatever that is looked after. I'm not saying never quit your job, but like make sure those ducks are in a row. But for someone else, maybe you don't need to quit your job. Maybe part-time plus would be ideal for you.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's great. And I feel like I can't not ask you for your productivity tips. Because, like, you know, this is literally what you do. You've talked about micro breaks and a lot of things as well. And, you know, you're clearly productive. You know, the fact that you've got a job and you're doing a startup and you're doing all these different things. What would be your key productivity tips for people out there? And obviously, as we said, disclaimer, like, it's not going to work for every single person, but what are some of yours that you would recommend?
So the first thing that is for everyone, this is 100% for every single person, is start with the end in mind. This isn't a tip or a trick. This is a fundamental thing. So it doesn't have to be actually a really interesting thing someone once said to me was like, write your speech that someone would say about you at your 80th birthday party, and like, what are you going to do today to kind of make that a reality, which I thought was really sweet. I was like, oh, that's fun. That is the sweet version of my one, which is, make sure. Yeah, like that. That's what I do. What am I going to say at your funeral? And everyone's there being very glamorous, like, oh, yes. Yeah, whether you're morbid or not, you can pick your one. But also it's like, I don't necessarily believe in like 10-year plans, 5-year plans, because I think so much can change. But I do think it's quite a fun exercise to be like, what would I particularly like, what my life, work, what I want it to maybe feel like at that stage. But then I would say on a specific level, it's thinking at the end of this year, or you could even be more granular and say, at the end of this project, I'm starting a project. What does success look like? What are the success metrics for the team, but also for myself? What does success look and feel like to me? And what do I have to do to get there? But the reason I say that is because I am not against hard work at all. Like, there is joy in like knuckling down and being like, I did that. Like, that was really tough and I did it. But what I want to try and help people do is to look after themselves as well and like be able to find the joy in that hard work. Hard work doesn't have to be miserable. It can be, and I'm not negating that at all. Sometimes your head is down and you're like, this sucks. But you have your end in mind and you're like, oh, I'm going to get there without what we always say, the personal price tag, without sacrificing yourself at the altar. So start with the end in mind. That's really, really important. I think then is the application to your specific circumstances. So if you're an entrepreneur and it's just you, it's okay, what does this look like with any disability I'm working with or any other thing that I'm working with? Kids, family life. Does your dog maybe you got a dog that is very demanding of your attention, like I believe both of ours are, things like that. But then also if you're in a team, whether you're the boss or you're an employee, what does your team need? What does your manager need? What's the specific circumstances? Like that is wrapped around your personal productivity as well. So you have to take all of that into account. The other thing is, I don't care how you do it, but you have to plan. Like, you have to plan your time. And people don't like that, oh, I just go with the flow. It's really ineffective. I think it was Cal Newport said on his podcast recently, he said, what should I do next is a really ineffective way to work. And this isn't just because, oh, you won't do work that's good for the business or whatever, like this kind of like the thing that makes people feel icky. It's like you will feel frantic and it won't feel good when you have forgotten to do something and you're behind on something, whatever it is, because you haven't just taken 5 minutes to be like, this is what I need to do. So you could be like me and have a 4-stage planning system. But for context, that's brains out everything onto ClickUp. Fortnightly, I plan out my my tasks for both of those weeks. That's so that I'm always a week ahead. I'm never like caught up on, I'm never tripped up by something. I then do a weekly plan, and then I do a daily plan. That helps me feel in control. Doesn't work for everyone.
No.
But that helps me feel in control of what I need to do. Your planning might be key thing that needs to get done on Monday, bam. Key thing on Tuesday, bam, blah, blah, blah. That could be it. Great. If that's what works for you and makes you know that that key thing isn't going to get missed, great. But everyone needs to plan in some way, because otherwise you're just at the mercy of everything. And the other thing with that is, if you haven't planned things, you can't communicate that with the people around you. And so their emergency is suddenly going to be your urgency, when actually you had something else that was urgent. But because you couldn't communicate that, because you didn't plan, suddenly they're like, well, I didn't think you were doing anything. And you're like, oh, I actually did really need to do that thing, but I didn't know. I forgot. Yeah, so planning is super, super important. I've got here a note that just says, popcorn brain is not your friend. Again, this is something that is for everyone. We all need to practice focus. So whether it's watching your favourite TV show, but giving that your undivided attention, or reading a book, or doing a course, or whatever, we all need to practice focus more, because big tech is taking it from us. All of this algorithmic, snappy content is making us think that this is the way that things need to be consumed. So work and life are not separate. They are two sides of the same coin. And if we are unfocused in life through social media, through snappy content, that carries through to how we work as well. So practicing focus across both will make both of those things better. And then finally, this is quite deep, but I've written, the only constant is change.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that is true.
It's so true. So I've mentioned this before, but I think you'll notice that all these productivity tips I'm given are not actually about like
actual.
It's about everything that is wrapped around in it too. And I think all of these are true for everyone. And then it's how you apply them for yourself. So when I say the only constant is change, in this context, what I mean is right now I have no children. In the context we've talked about with the work and stuff, and I don't have a mortgage. So there's that. Next year, my life might look very different, and all of the things we've just talked about may need to change. And so becoming more comfortable with that uncertainty and that flexibility, I think is really important, because I think we work so hard to find the thing that works for us. I don't know, it can make you feel really off kilter when circumstances change and you're like, what's working? It's not working for me anymore. And you're like, we double down on trying to make that thing work, instead of being like, okay, either everything needs to change because my whole life is different, or maybe I'm in a moment where I need to care for someone, or I'm injured. That is really exhausting, and you really need to like be injured. Actually takes up a huge amount of mental capacity, because your brain is working really hard to like heal yourself. Whatever it is, whether it's like a momentary change or it's a ongoing change, we need to, I think, be more comfortable with the fact that things will change. So that's really important.
Wow. I think that's, a really also great note to end on, the fact that everything, like, I feel like there's that quote as well, which is like, nothing is certain in life other than death and taxes. Like, that's what someone said. And I feel like, sure. But, I feel like that's a really morbid way of putting it as well. But I think, like, I love yours, like the only thing constant is change, and so many people are scared of change, and that's the thing. Like, if they just embrace it, then then I think life will get a little bit easier, because it's going to things are going to happen.
Yeah, and there's a great quote in by Naval Ravikant, where it's a lot about acceptance, and it can feel a bit depressing, but actually it's not. It's about the idea. A lot of what he writes about is acceptance of the fact that we're only here for a finite time. So like, why stress about the things that don't need to stress about, obviously. And one of the things he says is about this sort of nomadic, like, dream lifestyle. He's like, actually, the best that most of us can hope for is to accept that we're a rat in the rat race, and be like, what pockets of joy can we find in that? Because we're probably not going to escape it. And that tension of being like desiring this like sitting on a beach and doing nothing.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, but what can you do if sitting on a beach and doing nothing is something that means a lot to you? What can you do to design a life where you do that 4 times a year?
Yeah.
You know, and like just accepting that you're a rat in a rat race, but you're a rat that gets to go on holiday sometimes, and that's great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Exactly.
You're probably never going to be able to throw your laptop in a river, as my partner is to say of his dream. But, you know, this is what we've got. This is that we've got. I think if one thing we need to really hold on to from COVID is like, this is what we've got to work with. I always say, I really, really, really believe this with all my heart. We work on average for 90,000 hours of our lives.
Yes.
But I think that we owe it to ourselves to make those 90,000 hours the best they can be.
Yeah.
That's what it all comes down to for me.
Aw, I think that's such a perfect and like, yeah, there's no escape from working your butt off. I feel like it's worthwhile and to get what you want to get out of life. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been incredible, and I think we've got so many great pieces of advice on productivity, and I can't wait to see what Interlude does.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.